Welcome. Thanks for joining us. This is Dennis. I'm going to just kick us off here a little bit. Obviously, we're really excited to be a part of working again with End of Use Wisconsin with the support of the Otto Bremer Foundation to help bring strategy to some of End of Use's members. So I know CASDA has had a relationship with FCI in the past, and I think you just recently celebrated your 25th anniversary last year. So what a great time to really be engaging in some strategic and dynamic thinking and trying to chart the future direction. So can we just maybe do a roll call of kind of getting an understanding of who's in the room with you, Kelly, and then maybe Patty and Julie, it's just the two of you from End of Use, correct?
Sure. This is Patty Seeger, Executive Director of End Domestic Abuse Wisconsin.
And this is Julie Fisher, Director of Resources at End Domestic Abuse.
And it's Kelly Berger, the Executive Director of CASDA.
Also with Kaden Norwood, Sexual Assault Program Coordinator here at CASDA. And Jill Hinders, Community Engagement Coordinator at CASDA. And Dana Doyle, Shelter Program Director at CASDA. Still Monday.
And from FCI, I'm Ben Williams. I'm the Director of Advisory Services. And Dennis, who's been speaking here, is also present now.
So one of the things that we really like to do as a practice with all of our client work is to really try and set maybe the tone for how we're going to be together. And so we oftentimes really are really intentional to try and set some agreements about how we're going to work together, how we're going to be together. And since this is the formal kickoff to this engagement, we're going to start that practice actually today in a virtual environment. So what you should see on your screen now is a slide that's titled Team Agreements. Much of this is rooted in, I think, strong facilitation and it's part of the practice of the art of hosting around some appreciative inquiry. And so there's a quote on the bottom of here that talks about asking for what you need and offering what you can. And I think that's just a great example of really owning your participation in the process and owning how you learn or how you can best engage. And so we always encourage folks to, if you're not getting what you need, please let us know. But also, one of the counterpoint to that is, trying to come up with some solutions or some ideas when you do have a specific need. So that's just an example. We're going to free think and maybe kind of go around the room here with a check-in activity. We just heard who's in the room, but maybe what question do we want to use?
What are you most excited about for this fall?
Okay, so that's the question we'll use that we'll ask each person to answer. So what are you most excited about this fall? But then also offer one agreement on how you feel we could best work together as a small group and as a larger group when we come together in October. So any volunteers to go first?
Well, I'm Dana again. I'm most excited about football starting.
All right.
That's because the Packers lost.
Exactly. I'm not sure in terms of agreements at this point in time. I'm sorry.
I didn't quite hear the end of that, Dana. What agreement did you put forward?
I do not know. That's what I put forward.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Someone else in the room with you?
Oh, I got lost of them. They're next.
All right.
I'm most excited about this fall. This is Kelly again, and I'm most excited about this whole process. I've been reading the book slowly and trying to digest all that, and just from what I've gotten into it, I think this is going to be an interesting way to do things. So I'm excited about that because I do think the team that we have now are going to have lots of ideas, and that's going to be interesting in the big group session. The agreement, and if I'm understanding what you're asking, I would hope that we can be honest.
Yep. You are on track. And I apologize. Maybe I should have modeled some agreements, but I'll just put one out there. I'll go next. So I concur with Dana. I'm most excited about Badger football. Home opener kicks off tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Looks like it's going to be a great day, so we are going to the game with our family. And one agreement that I would put forward is to have fun. This can be a, I don't want to say stressful, but this is, there's work involved in going through a strategy process, and I think sometimes we have to remind ourselves that we need to make sure to have some fun with it while we're doing that work.
I like that.
Me too.
This is Patty. I'll go. Oh, no, I'll let you go.
I'm sorry. It's kind of hard when you're on a phone with people.
I know, isn't it? We can't
Raise
see each
your
other's
hand.
faces.
This is Kaden. I am most excited for this fall, maybe actually having a fall and the leaves changing colors, which is something that's always really nice up here. I'm also really looking forward to Domestic Abuse Awareness Month. As far as team agreements, I would like to be creative.
Be creative. What would creativity look like from your perspective?
Now you're going to make me elaborate more. Thanks. Well, yeah, it involves thinking outside the box, having an open mind, and bringing forth ideas that we haven't seen happen yet. I think oftentimes when you come into a program and it has been established for 25 years, and there are certain policies and procedures and things that you do that sometimes, I mean, you need to start looking at things in a fresh way or bring new ideas, and that involves being creative.
Great. Thank you. Patty, do you want to go next?
Sure. Well, I am most excited for fall colors, similar to Kaden. I really look forward to fall as my favorite season of the year. My birthday is in October, so I always get excited for birthday month, which also is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I gave you swiped my idea. I was going to say, let's innovate.
Let's
That's
innovate.
a great way to put it.
Great.
This is
Julie,
Jill from.
Go ahead.
Did you want to have elaboration on the innovation piece before I butt in?
No, I think we're okay. I think some of what Patty articulated is similar to what Kaden offered, so I think we're okay.
Okay. So this is Jill from CASDA, and I'm just in a new position here of a couple of days ago with some expanded responsibilities. So I think on a personal level this fall, I am most excited to try on some new responsibilities. I'll be more involved in the grant writing here at CASDA, and to help us, to help the team bring those funds in that we always need to continue our great services. So I'm really excited about that. And then in terms of agreement, I really concur with Kaden on new ideas for a very established organization. I guess I would add making sure all voices are heard, because I know when we get to October there are going to be a lot of people around the table, and so I really hope for, I guess, equity. That might not be quite the right word, but equitable in making sure that everyone's voices are heard and that not a single voice is dominating the conversation.
I like that. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dennis.
I was just going to say, I agree around that equitable participation. Sometimes I like to articulate that as 100% participation. We want all voices in the room, and sometimes that can be, if I'm an extrovert, which I tend to be, so I need to maybe, self-monitor and host myself to ensure that I don't over-participate. And if you're an introvert and you're someone who maybe it doesn't, not feeling as comfortable, it doesn't come naturally for you, how do you really push and stretch yourself to have an opinion and voice and engage maybe when it doesn't come naturally? So I really like that. Thank you so much for that. Julie, did you want to go next?
Yeah, except Jill stole mine and then Dennis expanded on it. I'm teasing. I'm looking forward to my first grandchild,
Ooh.
and in November, and also to just a lot of exciting things that are going on in our organization, and to this opportunity to do more with the strategy and strategy development, and to meet all of you. And the place I was going was you know, it was also about hearing all voices, and I'm more of the introvert, and so it's also having the courage, and Dennis said this, but you know, it's listening, and it's also having the courage to say things that might not be comfortable saying. You know, so on both sides, like Dennis said, you know, being ears and listening, and also just being willing to say the things that you really want to say, and that the space that we create is a great space for everybody to do that.
Yeah, that's great. Oftentimes I refer to that as kind of edges, and so like there may be an edge for someone, and we want to create a safe space so that it's possible for everyone to fully participate and have some of that courageous sharing, and so I think that's a great one. Dana, have we heard from Dana?
Yeah, she was the first
Yes.
one.
Okay, sorry. I was just trying to look at my list to see if there was anyone in Kelly's room that we haven't heard from before we hear from Ben.
That's what you're doing. Stick it on me.
Okay, I think for me in the fall, I'm most excited about the seasons changing, and I like to rock climb quite a bit, and I go to Devil's Lake, which is in central Wisconsin. It's always beautiful to see the seasons change and while kind of climbing there. So that's one of the things I'm most excited about. For team agreements, I think this fits with a lot of what's been said here, so I'm actually going to throw out two if that's all right. I think one is having a positive intent, and that's, I think we are going to have different ideas for what could be, but I think we all share a common goal of how CASDA can become the most effective organization it can to reach its mission, and so that's one. And then I think two, I think this has been said already in some of these, but really that space to step up or to step back. And so to me, that is where, for extroverts, sometimes it is stepping back to make that space available for others to share their thoughts, and then for those that are more introverted or contemplative to make sure that they have that space to step in. And so as facilitators, I think that's the responsibility that we'll have to make sure that space is open for that, and that we can get insights and feedback in a variety of different ways. And so that we make it a comfortable space for everyone.
Great. So thank you everyone for participating in this activity. This will be expanded upon when we bring the full group together. So we'll start with what we have here today, and then we'll ask for others to engage in some type of a check-in activity to also offer some agreements that they may want to bring to that full day session when we all come together with a larger group. So, but this is a great place to start. So I'm going to just quickly talk a little bit about kind of like what is on our agenda for today. And I think we're on the next slide. So it should be coming up, but essentially our time together is really to try and review the project scope of work and the timeline to really kind of help the smaller the work group, as we refer to this team, to really understand kind of what's happening when, what's coming, and so that you can be shepherds and really help everyone else understand what's happening with the different parts of the engagement and how this is all coming together. And so we're going to walk you through kind of like what is the work that's going to happen, and then also what is the timeline that we have estimated this to occur. We're also going to October. So any questions about what we're trying to accomplish in our time this morning? All right. So the project scope is on the next, the mission, your mission. We always want to start with your mission. So this is the current mission, to provide supportive services to individuals hurt by domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse while advocating for a community effort to end violence. I think it's a pretty powerful mission. One question I might have for Kelly and the folks in the room with you is, can you tell us the last time the mission has been reviewed or modified, or if there's been any mission mission statement, vision, or values? I'm curious if there's been work done on any of those three recently.
The board, after we did the capacity building stuff with Patty and Ben, the board does look at it annually, the mission statement, and they just did that in January of this year and did not do any modifications. We feel we have a really strong mission. That mission, I've been at CASDA since 1991, and I think we created that mission by 1993, and I couldn't tell you what the other one was before that. And this has been our mission since then.
Okay. So we may or may not spend any time on that in the full day session. I guess it sounds like it's been evaluated or reviewed at some level recently, when that was maybe a year or so ago. What we may do is have some very brief conversation around how dynamic is it. There's some recent trends, and I participated in some learning recently that really helps to craft mission and vision statements from the lens of how dynamic are they. And so we may bring some of that into the review when we're all together on that full day. Do you have anything you want to add here?
Yeah, and just in general, as we go through each of the steps, and we'll talk about how we look at strategy as a whole, but largely it's around how do we better reach our mission and vision. And so we'll continue to bring this in to discussions as we look at our business model, as we look at our finances, as we look at the options ahead of us that we can pursue. Keeping this in mind as we go through the process is really core to what we're seeking.
Great. So do you want to walk through the work plan?
Sure. And so on this next page, it'll just be a brief kind of timeline of scope for what we have and where we're at now. We're actually on, I'm not sure if you can see my arrow here, but we're on the kickoff call here on September 5th in the middle of the first phase, which is really around getting everyone engaged, ready to go, and establishing kind of the process and platform for how we'll move forward. One of the next steps, and I believe a lot of the invites have been going out this week, has been to have some one-on-one conversations with people that are closely tied either on the board or staff to get their perspectives, and we'll create a summary memo of that, kind of synthesizing the themes that we hear in those conversations to help further enrich the full day session when we're bringing people together so that we all are starting on that same page. I think this is especially useful for people that are newer to the organization and may not have that same level of knowledge and awareness of what has been going on or what has, potential in the future. And so this is kind of a way to bring that to the fore as we start that conversation in phase 2 around the strategy development. And so that is really the full day session on the 16th is a big part of that kickoff. We'll have, I believe, one meeting prior to that where we'll probably review the interview feedback as a group here with the work group that we have assembled, and then just kind of go over what's going to happen in that day in a little bit more detail than we do now, so that we're really ready to kick that off and make it a powerful day. And then as we move into the third phase, this is really around the refinement. So following that full day session where we're really looking at where we've been and where we can go, this is where we get into the gritty details of how are we going to make it work and how are we make it effective. So some of it's refining, some of it's planning for moving forward. This is also where, as we've been developing this, internally within CASDA, we want to look out externally and kind of get outside of our own perspectives and hear the insights from others that are familiar with CASDA in the past or who we'd want to be connecting with in the future to get their insights. And then that last phase around implementation planning is clarifying the resources required, both human, financial, capital, to really make sure that we can achieve what we've set for.
So the only thing I would add on that slide is the yellow sheet, the yellow highlighted cells or the rows are what we're going to try at the end of the call today to have everybody pull up their calendars to see if we can set those times for that pre-call and then the work group after the full day session in October, and then some of the refinement and some of the implementation planning that would happen probably later into November and early December. So we'll get to that before we get to the end of the call, but that just gives you a sense of why some of those are yellowed out.
So here's the timeline just as a big picture again. We're in the heart of the first phase now, and we're moving quickly into that strategy development phase for the full day session, and then kind of moving through each of the steps with the target of finishing before the end of this year.
So I'll kind of get us going on kind of an overview of the model. Again, RTSP is the acronym for Real-Time Strategic Planning, and the idea here is that the model really intends to help organizations develop their strategic thinking skills to respond to what we like to refer to as an ongoing and ever-changing external environment. So nonprofits oftentimes develop strategy at various levels. And so there's a visualization that's going to come up here in a little bit, but we really want to help those organizations look at strategy amongst those different levels. But before we do that, we want to really have a definition of what are we talking about when we talk about strategy. And so this is the definition that comes out of the model and the definition that FCI has really adopted when we talk about strategy. But strategy is really this definition or defined as this coordinated set of actions to create and sustain a competitive advantage in achieving the organization's mission. And there's a couple of key words there, and I would draw your attention to coordinated, in that strategy just doesn't happen by happenstance, and that there needs to be some coordination of effort, both with the board and helping to set, what is the overall direction, and then what is the staff kind of really helping to implement and operationalize what is that overall strategy. The other piece is oftentimes there's an edge around the word competitive. And so in our sector, we work in a collaborative fashion. And so sometimes for some individuals, it's like, oh, we aren't competitors. And so we're going to tease this out a little bit shortly, but essentially we all do compete for different resources, regardless of what kind of organization we are. And so one of the pieces here is to really identify and craft is like, what makes CASDA different? What makes them unique? What are their competitive advantages? And how do those get leveraged then in achieving their mission? So we'll talk about that when we talk about competitors and that part of the model. The other piece here is kind of a demonstration of those levels of strategy. In the model, again, it really talks about 3 levels, and they refer to this as, I think, the strategy pyramid, which is illustrated on the screen that you should be seeing now. But it's really an organizing tool that helps you think about the categories of strategy and all the different types of challenges that nonprofit organizations tend to have. And so it starts at the top of the pyramid, and that's what is referred to as kind of that organizational level. And organizational strategy really, this has to do with your mission, whereas programmatic strategy is more about the programs that are being designed and that are being implemented. And then operational is really kind of like, what are the things that go in to help hold all of this up? So organizational strategy is helping to determine mission, vision, trends, competitors, partners or collaborators, and certainly the organization's market position. And so this is really where the model focuses, because the organization really cannot plan at that programmatic or that operational level until they've really thought about strategy at the highest level of the organization. And quite often, traditional strategic planning is about setting goals and creating a plan to carry out those goals. But real strategy is about thinking strategically and really trying to take action in that real-time type of mindset. And that's different from programmatic. Programmatic is where you're deciding on the approach, perhaps, or what types of programs or activities are being offered to help achieve specific outcomes related to whom you're serving. And so programmatic strategies are really intended to increase impact. And so we're used to thinking about services that should, about what services we should provide to achieve our mission. And really the difference with traditional strategic planning and this type of planning is to recognize that programmatic choice is neither a given nor once chosen, set forever in stone. Programs change, they shift, they move. And expressing programmatic choices as strategies rather than merely the work that we do, really elevates them to that higher level of scrutiny, and that's where we were talking about impact earlier. And so the difference there is that the actions are focused on programmatic choice, and programmatic strategies really help define what the organization is focusing on to find the best ways to carry out their mission. And then the last one, as I mentioned earlier, operational. That's really kind of how do you administer and oversee systems or policies or areas, or in the areas that these are oftentimes we're talking about finance, human resources, communications, could be information technology or whatnot. But this is really kind of the broad base on which all the other strategies really rest. They help support programmatic and operational strategies by providing that stable, well-functioning kind of foundation that really helps enable those higher levels of strategy to be successful. We at FCI have kind of added a fourth level that is not included in the book and not included in the model, and that's the level of governance. And so you see the blue triangle that's kind of supporting the other strategies. Excuse me. We take the position that if there isn't strong and impactful and high-performing governance of the organization, it's really difficult to ensure that these other levels of strategy are really functioning as well as they can. So that's kind of the illustration that we're trying to describe here, and that governance is really wrapping themselves all around the other strategies of the organization. It's not to say that the board and those that govern the organization are involved in the day-to-day programmatic or operational, but they certainly are helping to set the organizational strategy, and then they're really ensuring that there's accountability for that impact in those strategies moving forward. Any questions about the strategy pyramid? Okay. This is a visual representation of what a planning cycle looks like using this model. And so it starts kind of, if you think about it, almost as a clock. In step A, they're really talking about the business model. That's the kind of who we are, what we do, how we do it, how it's financed, really kind of looking inside the organization to say kind of like, what do we have here, or in this case, I think the question is, who are we? It also includes that second step B, and we're going to talk about each of these in a little bit more detail here in a minute, but the market awareness is really starting to look at trends, position, competition, who else is in that marketplace, what are you competing for, which is really leading the organization back to what we were talking about when we were defining strategy, and that's that competitive advantage, which we see as kind of the ability to produce, superior value that can either be achieved by having a unique asset, such as a unique strength, or perhaps having outstanding execution, maybe being faster, maybe being more cost-effective, or offering a better service experience. But essentially, a nonprofit's competitive advantage is really the most important component of developing strategy, and that's why it's part of that definition. It's really the very core of what strategy can be. Moving along in the cycle there then, so those kind of part of the business model we will do as pre-work, specifically around the finances, and then there are going to be some activities that are going to occur in that full day session in the morning, both large and small group, that help us to really look at and define those trends, those competitors, what's in the marketplace, and then coming together around kind of how do we craft what are our competitive advantages. It moves along then kind of like once we know who we are, where are we and how did we get here, and moving towards kind of where are we going into the future. And one of the decision-making tools that the model includes that really is helpful to clients and when they start to look at strategies is what we refer to as a strategy screen, which is essentially a decision-making filter that really kind of helps to identify and choose whether a particular strategy is consistent with the organization's identity. So oftentimes the criteria that are built into that strategy statement are mission, they are identity, they are the current market position. There are oftentimes, what we refer to as kind of 5 to 8 elements that you really want to vet all strategies against. And that strategy screen will be built in that full day session as well. And then moving along into the model, once the strategy screen or the filtering tool is designed, then we want to ask kind of what are the big questions facing the organization. We've had an opportunity to kind of look inside, what's our business model. We've had an opportunity to look outside, what's in the marketplace, where are some of the other competitors, where do we fit, what are our advantages. And we really want to start asking kind of like what are the biggest questions facing the organization. So there's a group exercise where we really try and help tease that out. And then we start to flesh out based on what time we have left in the full day. It's like, okay, what are the biggest of the big questions? and then what are the potential answers to those questions. And those answers and those big questions really start to frame what are the go-forward strategies and potential action steps for the organization. So A through E is really going to, and possibly F, depending on our time frame, will happen in that full day session. The half-day session the following day is where we will continue to develop those potential strategies, which is step F. And then the testing is really what comes after that half-day session, when we go back and, and based on what the small group determines based on the strategies, who we're going to talk to say, CASDA is thinking of moving in this direction in the future. We want to get some good feedback on that. And so that's the next step that kind of comes out of when we're together. FCI and Patty and Julie the four of us will be helping to do those external interviews, come back with some feedback on them to the small work group before we move into that last step, which is really implementation and really the final step of how do we operationalize and implement the strategies that we have selected. So that's a real high level of the model. And now we're going to kind of move into a little bit some of the additional pieces so you get a better sense of what is in those individual steps.
Great. And so that first step, again, is really understanding what is our current business model. And so when we look at that, that includes several different areas. Part of it, the geography that we're working in, where are we serving, the customers and clients, who are we seeking to reach out to, and what programs are we offering, so how are we reaching them with what types of services and propositions. And then importantly, and this is sometimes ignored, how are we funding these different types of programs in order to reach that impact? And so when we look at that current business model, in terms of questions, it's kind of like looking at who we are, what we do, how we do it, and then how do we finance it. And I think this is a great time to reflect on, does our business model mirror what we say our strategic direction and mission statement is? That's a one point that we often will check in there. I think part of it, and this is true for most nonprofit organizations that we've worked with, it's very easy to say the things that we want to be doing, but it's very difficult to say what's the boundaries and scope level of what we're trying to do. And so when we're looking at this business model, we'll focus on both what we do include in terms of areas we serve, where we prioritize our clients, our program areas, and our funding sources, as well as those that we do not serve or focus on serving with different opportunities. And I think that's a really helpful exercise to kind of define where are we now. And one of the most common questions we get when we look at this is it what we have today, or is it what we wish it would be? And so this is a great way to start getting some insights into, if we could do things slightly differently, what would that look like? And so this is kind of where keeping that in the back of your mind as you're looking at your current business model to inform what we'll be doing as we move forward. The one part of the homework that we'll have in advance to the full day will really be looking at those financials in a bit more detail. And some of that's looking at the current funding sources over typically a 2-year period, as well as the program income and expenses, so not just at the organization level as a whole, but for each offering and service area, what's the income and expense, so that we can kind of get a full picture of the financial side as we move into looking at the next step. So that's just a real quick overview of the current business model. Then the next phase after that is looking outside the organization. So what are the market and competitive trends that we can look at there? Dennis, do you want to walk through a little with that?
Sure. So when we talk about, this is really trying to identify kind of market awareness before we get to competitive advantage. You need to look at what are the trends or those forces that are really impacting the organization. And when we talk about trends, I think there's another slide here that'll get into this a little bit in more detail, but it is those social or technological or political that have really created your current position, kind of like what's going on. And there's a framework that will help to flesh this out and get people to think around, well, what are the things that are impacting us and as they relate to some of these trends? Some may apply, some may not apply, but this just gives you a general sense of kind of like what are we talking about. Economics, demographics, funding obviously is typically one that most organizations pay some attention to. Because you are engaged in advocacy, that policy or politics piece obviously has a play. Technology is impacting everyone. So that's some of the trends that we tend to really try and pay attention to. But what we're really trying to get to is kind of like position. And when we talk about position, we're talking about the market and the organization's kind of place in it and how you got there. And that really is oftentimes really, talking about competition. And so when we talk about competition, again, sometimes this is a little uncomfortable for some folks in the sector because we are more collaborative in nature. But I think on the next slide, when we really talk about kind of and looking at what nonprofits compete for, it's not just what I think oftentimes people think of as, and that's funding, and that, okay, is United Way going to fund me? Are they going to fund another affiliate? Is the Community Foundation going to fund us? Are they going to fund someone else? But it really is talking about, who are our consumers? Who are our constituents? Do they have the ability to get services elsewhere? If so, what's the difference? Why would they choose to come to our shelter versus, perhaps going somewhere else? It's also human capital. That's both board and staff. Why do I work for CASDA? Why do I serve as a board of director for CASDA? Why do I want to volunteer there versus maybe go somewhere else in the community? And then obviously time and attention. There's a direct kind of link here to what kind of attention are you getting from policymakers? What kind of attention are you getting from the media? What kind of attention are you getting from the public or the community? Because those can all have direct links back to funding in some regards. And so we try and kind of tease out kind of like what is the organization competing for. And we look at that in the framework of 3 different kinds of what I would say kind of buckets. And those are direct competitors, substitutable competitors, and then what we refer to as kind of resource competitors. Direct competitors, there may or may not be direct competitors in your immediate market, but perhaps if you look at the broader market and where you perhaps have some satellite facilities, there might be competitors in some other marketplaces, but it's kind of those organizations that really are doing very similar work in the same marketplace. They do what you do, I think is how it's written here, is that they have similar programs within a similar geography and they're serving similar customers or clients or constituents. Substitutable competitors are those organizations that really are meeting the same needs that your nonprofit meets, but perhaps in a different way. And so, in Madison here, it might be what does the Salvation Army do to help support perhaps some individuals that maybe are coming from a violent or how do I want to describe it, a challenging, environment versus going to Days or going to Wakasa or going to End Abuse. Like where do they get which type of resources from those organizations that maybe are serving perhaps similar communities but in a different way? And then resource competitors are really those organizations that really, they don't compete for the same customers or the same client or constituent, but you are competing for them for oftentimes in other resources such as funding or that human capital, that time and talent, volunteers as well, could be staff, could be media attention. And so there's a framework on how we help to kind of frame this out when we talk about competition. And really these are leading us to what we refer to again as that competitive advantage. And so the competitor analysis really helps the organization be much more clear about what is their competitive advantage. What do the others do? What do we do? What do we do better? What makes us unique? And so this is oftentimes one of the most important components of really developing strategy. It's at the very core because it's really about what are you doing differently, and it helps you then how do you leverage whatever your competitive advantages are so that you can have greater impact in achieving your mission and producing some of that social value. So what questions do we have so far about these different steps, either the business model or the competition, the competitive advantage? Any questions about the model in general or specific parts of the model? Or anything, Patty, you want to add and from your experiences in using the model?
Well, I will say that for us, as we identified our competitive advantage and really understood what our niche was as a coalition, it really helps us in deciding like new programming or the kinds of grants that we should go for. It really helps, it creates a filter for us so that we stay on point. One example I would give is that we were offered the opportunity to seek funding to implement some elements of the Affordable Care Act. And there are elements in the Affordable Care Act that really relate directly to domestic violence and domestic violence victims. And so we sat and did a little analysis about, is that really our niche? Because we could select a specific demographic to serve, domestic violence victims and domestic violence programs. But we, under the rules, even though we would select a specific demographic, we would have to also serve everybody who ever came to us. We couldn't just be that demographic. It would be our focus, but if anyone off the street came to us and said, I want help with accessing the Affordable Care Act, we would have to help them. And we decided that it was just too much of a stretch for us. So this is how this works. You know, we look at what is it that we're really good at, you know, and how do we stay within that? So we're not stretching ourselves and becoming too diffuse and too thin.
Great.
I think that's a great illustration of the logic and the types of questions that get integrated into the strategy screen. And so that's almost always one of those questions is, how does this leverage our core advantages? And that's kind of part of the set of things that you can do as you consider those new opportunities.
Right. And you know, the strategy screen for me is extremely useful. I actually have it pinned up on my bulletin board right on my desk. I look at it every day. And, you know, the questions that I ask when making decisions is, what's the best way to achieve our mission? And is this consistent with our competitive advantage and our identity? It really helps, this process really helps us to refine what we're doing. So we, you know, not that we don't innovate, because we're always looking for ways to innovate in the work that we do, but it's about innovating in the scope of what we're really good at.
Great. Any other questions, Kelly, from anyone in your room that has questions about the model or kind of what's happening on that full day session or beforehand?
I don't. I think it's pretty easy to understand. So
yeah,
yeah, we're good.
The full day session is the most fun because it is such a creative free think, you know. It's a way for us, you know, people to throw out a whole lot and then you just refine it and pull it all together. I love that day.
And we love facilitating that day, so it will be a fun day. So if there aren't any questions, then really the next step is to try and look at calendars to figure out, to keep the project moving forward, because part of this is like once the momentum is going, we have to keep it going. So that's part of the reason why there also is a smaller group, because it's easier to manage calendars and get people together. But it's also then to kind of take all the big messiness of kind of what happens in the full day into that next half day to go, okay, we got to start cleaning this up, and what are we really talking about, and what is it going to look like potentially, so that we are trying to craft what we refer to as a strategy statement. And the strategy statement is essentially then what we take out to the external interviewers to really kind of test in some way to say, CASDA is thinking about going in this direction, this is what they're kind of thinking about what it might look like, and to try and get feedback before you actually invest time and resources in perhaps pursuing some of those. So there's two kind of components of when we need to schedule meetings, and I just noticed there's a typo under the writing group. It should be November 10th, not October 10th. But essentially what we're trying to do is to find a time when we can get together, you know, kind of right before, within a week or two of the full day session, to go through the background summary memo that Ben was talking about earlier, which is really kind of us looking at all the documents that have been sent by Kelly, discerning the interviews into something that is digestible for themes or divergent views, and to have some conversation around that to kind of really ready the small group before we get everyone in the room. So that we're hoping to try and do the week of October 6th. Then we would be coming back together. Can you pull up the work plan? I think it might be more helpful to see the spreadsheet, to see the work plan here, to again see kind of the flow. So the idea is that we're trying to schedule that first meeting to prepare us for the full day, and then after the full day and the action planning day, we're going to be doing getting those external feedback interviews. So that's going to occur kind of between the 20th of October and the end of October, and trying to draft the initial kind of draft of what we refer to as the roadmap, or that's the document that this all will be combined into. So while that's occurring and we're doing the external interviews, what we're trying to do is bring the smaller group back together the week of November 3rd to potentially then debrief what we heard from the external interviews before we go into that implementation planning, that next phase. So I'm going to pause there, and hopefully everybody's grabbing their calendars or their phones or their Franklin planners or whatever you use to see if and what we can potentially try and set up for the week of October 6th. This would probably be, I'd say we'd schedule probably 90 minutes. I don't know if we'd use the full 90 minutes, but similar today, we'd want to carve out 90 minutes to see and to walk through kind of that external interview, to go through kind of, again, what's going to happen on the full day as it relates to the different design process, but just to make sure everybody's clear. So the week of October 6th is what we were looking for.
I can tell you right now from our end, Tuesday and Wednesday are probably the most flexible days for Julie and I. Unfortunately, I have a visit to my parents on the 9th and 10th in Colorado. So
I agree with Patty. That's the most flexible for me, is either the 7th or the 8th. We have a shelter donation drive on the 9th and 10th.
Yeah. The 7th, we have a conflict. We're facilitating a large group community session in La Crosse on the 7th. So the 7th would be more difficult for us. So what about the morning of the 8th, like mid-morning or early morning?
We've got support group on the morning of the 8th. Is there any way to do the afternoon of the 8th?
Afternoon of the 8th is better for Julie and I, too.
Okay.
What is the afternoon? Is that early, like 1 to 2:30, or is it later, 3 to 4:30?
Yeah,
4 would be fine.
3 to 4:30 is fine for us.
Or earlier, right? I mean,
at 3:15. So
could we do a slightly earlier one from perhaps 1 to 2:30?
I'm getting on a plane at 3:15 that day. That's my conflict.
Right, right.
I can do the 1 to 2:30.
Yeah, both Julie and I can.
yeah,
as well.
we can. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay, so 1 to 2:30 on the 6th, and we will send out all the calendar appointments for these afterwards.
On the 8th? 8th?
Yeah, sorry, I mistyped that. Yep.
The 8th.
We got it.
All right, so then, again, this group, all the folks that we have today, we're going to want to bring back together after we do the external interview process. And based on the time frame that we've estimated this will occur, we're trying to schedule something that first week of November.
November.
So starting the week of the 3rd?
Correct.
Okay.
As of right now.
Right now I have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday open.
Start group on Wednesday morning.
Wednesday is
Tuesday,
probably not work good for us.
Yeah, Wednesday won't work for Julie or I, but Tuesday or Thursday.
I think Thursday would be better for us.
Tuesday's better for me. Yeah. Okay.
The 4th's better for Jill. We're available on the 4th. The rest of us.
We have another full day session in La Crosse that day, so the 4th of November. It's also election day. I don't know if anybody realizes that, but the 4th is out for us that week. Is there possibility of doing something late afternoon on the 6th?
Late
for
afternoon.
us, I think so. Patty, does that work for you?
Yeah, that's good for me.
Yeah, that'll work.
When I say late afternoon, I'm thinking like 3:30 to 5. Does that work?
No.
We can do 3:30 to 5 on the 6th.
Okay. Yay.
All right.
All right. Again, we will send these appointments as we move them. Then the next piece is kind of what we refer to, and I think we talked with you, Kelly, when we initially had you on the initial call with us, is that the strategic planning work group, everyone that's here today, plus the individual that was not able to be on the phone, I think that was Luann, we want to then break it down into even a smaller group to really write by committee the final operational plan. And part of that is somewhat dependent on what is in the strategies. But the idea is that if we try and get some of those scheduled now, given the fact that this is November and holiday season is starting to come and whatnot and weather, we want to really try and look at who would be part of that writing group. and then try and schedule those meetings in November, and then one more final planning work group would probably be the first week of December. So the idea is that the work group is going to get a little bit smaller for when we try and really operationalize these, and then potentially bring back this the work group one more time to say, okay, here's the operational plan. What feedback does anyone have on this before we put it to the full board?
And so how many people are you thinking from CASDA to when we slim down the work group? 2, 3?
I would say 2 or 3, and you depending on if governance shows up as any of the strategies, you may need of those 2 or 3 to be a board member. So I'd say 2 staff plus 1 board member. If Luann's willing to hang on.
Yeah, and I can't speak for her today. I just know how busy she is at her job. I don't dare speak for her.
And with the New Year's Eve coming up too.
Yeah,
Sharing that.
she does chair our New Year's Eve gala special event too. So, and that's of course New Year's Eve. So we're going to be getting busy with that in the next month. I would think it could be myself, Jill, and Dana. Are you okay with that, Kaden? Okay. And if we can get Luann to come, Dennis, we will get her to come.
Okay. And if she's not available and there's a governance strategy that needs to be fleshed out, we'll probably do a one-off with her and maybe you.
Okay.
And just to give you a sense of what that might look like, so I have another client right now that's succession planning. The organization does not have a succession plan in place for their leader, either an emergency plan or what we refer to as a departure defined plan. The leader is, probably late career and retiring in the next, perhaps 5 years. The board really needs to help identify kind of what the next leader might look like and what's the process that they're going to take. And it's hard to have the staff write this plan when the board is going to be implementing it, and that's why we want to have a board member that kind of hangs on, because oftentimes there is some board work that needs to occur, and it's more difficult for the staff or the leader of the organization to try and tell the board, oh, this is what you're going to be doing, if there wasn't any representation from the board during that development. So that's just an example of kind of like why we try and hold on to a board member until the very end.
That's weird that you said that, because when I was sitting in my car reading that book yesterday on one of my breaks, I thought when I started looking at the pyramid that the organizational thing that truly is missing here at CASDA is a succession plan. We do not have one.
Yeah. So that may, I don't remember where that showed up in their capacity building assessment, but it probably was in there somewhere.
Yeah, and so I think we'll have a clear sense of what those potential strategies will be pretty quickly in the, after that, on that second day. And so by that time, we'll have a sense of whether some board involvement will be required. And as Dennis said, schedules are difficult, and so we can find flexible ways to make it work if necessary.
So if we look at the week number 10, is there anything that's in or out that week?
Tuesday, Monday is out for me, the 10th.
I'm open.
I'm open.
All CASDA's open.
Yeah, for me, Tuesday and Thursday are best.
Those are
But I
good.
could make Friday work.
Agree.
I had a hold still on that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for the second strategy engagement. We're not doing that this year, right?
Nope.
Okay, so, all right. So then we have a much freer week than we look like. So
Can we do Thursday?
sure, what time?
That whole day is open for me. Morning would be better, probably.
I like morning.
Morning's good.
Works for me.
Like 8:30 to 10?
Okay.
Sure.
All right. What about the week of the 17th and the following week? Thursday is no good for us.
What week? I'm sorry.
The week of November 17th?
Monday, Tuesday's not good for me.
Wednesday's fine in the afternoon for Julie and I can see.
Early afternoon, late afternoon?
Yeah, we could do starting at 10 in the morning on both Julie and I on Wednesday.
Yeah, but
What if we-
Kate, support group.
Yeah, we'd have to do afternoon if it were Wednesday. But this isn't including.
Wednesday afternoon is fine for us, too.
Yeah.
I still wouldn't.
Can I just clarify, because Kate did just ask a wonderful question. So these meetings that we're setting up on the November 6th, the 13th, is this the writing group or is this the full work group?
November 6th is the full work group, and then after that it becomes the writing group, the smaller group.
All right, I'm just going to note that then. Okay.
So my schedule doesn't conflict, so you can have it during.
Then we could do Wednesday morning.
So it's still not.
Oh.
It's not. If it's just so hectic during support group and so
Wednesday
many
might be better for us.
and it's my walk-in day.
Oh.
It's
She wants Thursday afternoon then.
Yep.
Can we do like
Okay.
1 to 2:30? Or
Sounds
Thursday,
good.
Wednesday afternoon?
Thursday is out for us. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if that was.
I thought we were talking about Wednesday.
Wednesday, the 19th, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, 1 to 2:30 would
Yep.
work.
That's good.
Okay. 1 to 2:30 on Wednesday the 19th.
Yay.
All right.
Perfect.
The following week is Thanksgiving, so we are not doing anything that week. And then if everything goes as planned, we try and wrap this up by that first week in December. So the first week in December is the week of the 1st.
Mm-hmm.
The only day that does not work for us, well, actually Monday and Tuesday are bad for us. Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday are relatively wide open.
Right. For
Those are better for us.
yeah, they're better for us. Thursday and Friday for me are wide open.
And again, now are we bringing, is this now we've created some kind of rough draft and we're bringing the full work group back together? I'm not following this.
Or is this the final writing team, Dennis?
It's still the final writing team.
Oh, it's the final writing? I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is the final writing team. We just have to think, are we going to bring everybody back one more time before probably maybe the following? Yes, this is the writing group.
Okay. And Patty, you said Thursday, Friday? Thursday I'm available all day, Friday morning.
Okay. Thursday's all day for me and Julie.
Yeah, me too.
Thursday's good.
How about
Thursday's good for Dana too and Jill.
Thursday at 9? Can we start at 9? I have a conflict right too early that morning. So 9 to 10:30 on Thursday?
Work.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then let's try and schedule a meeting with the full group the week of the 8th. I'm adding a row for this one. So that week looks pretty good for us except for Wednesday afternoon. We could do anytime on Tuesday.
Tuesday's pretty open for me.
Yeah, Tuesday's better for me. Wednesday, and Thursday I have to fly to Washington, D.C.
Does Tuesday work for the folks with you, Kelly?
Yep, our group.
Right now.
Yeah, right now. Tuesday will work.
Easier when we go out farther, right?
Exactly. It's starting to look better.
What if we said 9 o'clock again, 9 to 10:30 on Tuesday the 9th of December?
I could do 9:30. I have an appointment that morning.
Okay,
Goes
9:30 to
until
11?
Works for me.
Works for me.
Yep.
All right, great. I know this is a little painful, but I'll tell you, it's much easier to do this now than to try and do this a month from now.
Yep, I agree.
So, okay, so we will get you all of the appointments and the writing and the work group meetings that are not face-to-face, which is pretty much everything after that day-and-a-half session, will be done via GoToMeeting where we'll be able to project it on the wall. You'll see what's happening so that everybody can be together. Patty, Julie, we might want to be in the room together, so whether we do it there or here, we can talk about, but this is kind of the style of how this will work, so you have something to see and you can kind of see what's happening and what's being refined and tracked. And so,
Right. You can do it in our conference room on our big screen TV. We have a keyboard in there.
okay. We have a full projection on our wall, too, in our conference room, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
We'll
doesn't matter.
figure that out.
You guys are close to us.
So we'll get the appointments set out. We will send the updated work plan, and then, Kelly, we will send you those pre-worksheets on the financials, the funding stuff, and whether or not you do those, or I don't know if you have a CFO or a controller or a bookkeeper. That would be you?
That's
It's
Kelly.
me.
Okay. We will send them to you and work on getting those completed within the next few weeks. They're not too painful, but we can help you fill those out as well if you need some support.
Okay.
When is the board meeting in December, or is there a board meeting in December?
Yes, sir. Let me open my date book again. It will be December 16th.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, that is good.
So here's what I offer. That's our target, perhaps, is what we're really going for and trying to get the plan to the board to adopt and ratify by the end of the year. Not knowing what's going to come out of the full day, the half day, can we maintain the schedule of all the refinements and the implementation planning? This is kind of a best case scenario. I'm just being honest with you. Sometimes things take a little bit longer than we anticipate. So this is what we're really going for, to have it done by the end of the year, but there's the possibility that it may get rolled over into the new year.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds
And
good.
one thing just to consider, and we'll talk about this more as we're refining it, but at the November meeting, I'm not if it's a monthly meeting schedule, maybe in November, it's introducing the plan prior to the implementation work, and so that the board is kind of warmed up to what's going on, because I think that can make for a better discussion as opposed to sometimes board members, you want to make sure they feel prepared and really bought into the plan.
Yeah. If there's any key questions or key concerns, we'd have time to kind of address them before they're coming back with the plan.
Exactly.
Yep, our board meeting is November 18th, so that'll work fine too. And I'm sure they'll ask for an update if they're going to come for a full day session. They're going to want to know what's up.
Board update on plan progress.
Yeah, right here.
Row 25. That should be the 18th.
November 18th. Okay. That'll be perfect.
All right. Any other questions before we let everyone go?
No, I'm so thrilled that you got all these dates down. Yeah.
I know. I'm impressed.
Pretty amazing.
Dude, we're happy.
Yes, we are happy when it's all calendared. So we'll get the appointments to you. Kelly will follow up with the worksheets. And we will talk to you all on October 8th at 1 o'clock.
Okay. And just so you know, Dennis, those worksheets, what deadline am I going to have to get those filled out?
End of the month?
Huh?
End of September?
That should be workable, just because we're going out of town for 4 days next week.
Okay.
I think that'll be fine.
Okay.
The sheets are not terribly difficult to pull together, but it's just useful context information. And so if you have questions about any of the things, you can reach out to us and we can help you with it.
Okay.
Wonderful.
All right. Well, have a great afternoon and a great weekend, everyone. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.